So I'm with Randy Lewis, one of the old-time prospectors, who's a wealth of information, and he's been tight-lipped, but he's starting to break free because he's getting older in years, just like me. But he's got a lot more information than me, and so anytime we can get him to talk to us, man, we're really appreciative. And with that said, Randy, you got a great story of something that happened to you, a trip you went on when you was in your younger years, and I want to hear about that. Tell us all.
Well, I had a couple of guys come to me and tell me that they had been doing a lot of research on the Rhodes mines, and they wanted to take me to a place up in the very tops of the Uinta Mountains, and the only way you can get there is with horses. And I thought, well, I guess we can do that, but I've never rode horses much, and I'm not familiar with them, and to me, I'm kind of scared of them. And they said, oh, don't worry, we'll get you a really good horse, and all you have to do is sit on it, and we'll be going. And so I said, oh, okay. So we decided to go. And so there's a story in one of the books. It's called 8 Flat Tires. I'm just going to skim over part of it because I don't have time to go through the whole story with you, but it starts out that we started out and we ended up getting 8 flat tires on the way just to the trailhead, and every time something would happen, it would. One time we got 2 flat tires at the same time, and we had to go back and forth to Duchesne and that and get tires and put on it. And one time the whole bottom of the trailer fell out because it was an old trailer, and we had horses running along on the road trying to keep up, and it was one of the most stressful things I'd ever been in my whole life. It was just one heck of a stressful day that day. Anyway, we finally got there, and we got the horses all saddled. I didn't know how to saddle a horse. I had one of my friends show me how to saddle the horse, and anyway, we got up there, and anyway, I went to get on this horse, and I didn't even know how to get on the horse, and he's telling me, you put your foot here, and you grab hold of it, and you yank yourself over, and anyway, I started to get on this horse, and it started jumping around, and I said, I thought you were going to give me a horse that I could ride, and they said, well, we couldn't get that horse, so we got this horse for you, and it's been in the pasture for 2 years and hasn't been ridden, so we'll just have to do the best we can. And so anyway, I tried to get on this horse, and I got one leg over in it, and I was up in the air bouncing around, and this horse was kicking and flying, and next thing I knew, I was flying through the air, and I was headed for this big rock. And I thought, well, when you're headed for a big rock, time goes real slow. It doesn't go fast, and so you get to see everything in slow motion as you're headed for this big rock, and luckily I missed it. I went over the top of it, and so anyway, we got the horse settled down, and we had to put the saddle and everything back on it again because it bucked off, and everything was scattered all over the ground, and we finally got the horse back together, and we went to get on it again, and this time my friend Dean grabbed hold of the reins. He says, I'll hold your horse while you get on. And I thought, okay. And so anyway, I get up on there, and all of a sudden it starts kicking and he grabs hold of the horse and jerks it down and runs over and grabs this big stick and hands it to me, and he says, next time that thing rears up, hit it right between the ears. And I says, well, Dan, that's going to be real fun, because then he's going to really be pissed off. And I says, I don't know if that's going to happen. Anyway, we went up the trail, and finally got the horse settled down, and we're going between these big rocks, and we're just barely enough room to get the horse through, and the horse I was on was a lunatic horse. I don't know what kind of a horse it was. It was a terrible horse, but it started kicking the rocks, and it bloodied up its legs, and oh, it was a terrible trying to get through the rocks. And finally we got on a little bit past, and then all of a sudden this horse decided it wasn't going to go no more, and so it started rearing up, and we're on a ledge, and it's just straight down on this side, and this horse was not going to go anymore. And so after a second, this horse reared up, and I jumped off, and luckily I didn't jump on the wrong side and go down the mountain, but the horse did. And the horse went head over heels down the mountain, and if you ever heard a horse scream, I heard it then. This horse was scared to death, and it was bouncing and down the mountain, and it was screaming, and I thought, well, that's the end of that horse. I'm not going to have to worry about that one again. So we got it down there, and I thought there was no way that horse was going to live through that. Heck, he went down there 100 yards down that mountain, head over heels, and scattered everything that was on his back, scattered all over the whole mountain. And I couldn't even stand up. I don't know if you've ever ridden a horse or not before, but if you ride a horse, you've got to let your body go limp. And I was trying to hold on with my legs, and I held on with my legs for about 2 hours, and when I went to get off the horse, my legs didn't work anymore. They were numb, and I just fell on the ground, and I couldn't get up. And I thought, my gosh, this horse riding is just not for me. But so I couldn't stand up, and I couldn't help go down the mountain. I couldn't help gather anything up. I couldn't even stand up. So anyway, finally the guy got down at the bottom, and I heard him yell, "The horse is still alive!" And I thought, how could a horse live through all that? I'll never know. But anyway, he says, "I'll lead him up the bottom of the canyon here, and I'll meet you up on top." And so the other guys got down off their horses, and they went and gathered all the stuff up, and we tied it on the best we could onto the horses, and we got to the top, and the horse was the one that fell down was up on top, and he seemed to be just as good as new. And I thought, well, okay. So they tied everything all back on him again, and we continued on our way, and we got up near the top of the trail, up to the top of the mountain, up at the top of the ridge, and there was a little flat right there, and I thought, I can't sit on this horse anymore. I've got to get off. I've got to try and stand up again, because my legs were numb. I couldn't stand up. So finally I stopped the horse, and I'm the last one. There's like 4 guys ahead of me, and I stopped. I couldn't go any further, and I had to stop and get off and walk for a minute. And so I got off the horse, and I'm trying to stand up, and I couldn't, and the horse is looking at me, and I don't know what he was doing, but finally I got stood up, and I started walking up a little bit to get some blood back in my legs, and I'm walking, and then all of a sudden it was really cloudy, and then all of a sudden it was so light and so bright, and that something was coming down from the sky, or from above. I don't know where it was coming from, but it was the brightest thing that I've ever seen in my whole life. It was a pillar of light that was coming down, and all of a sudden things were really warm and peaceful and quiet, and the time just stopped, and it was so bright that I couldn't even look at it. I put my head down, and I'm looking at the ground, and I could still see the pillar of light in front of me, and I'm not even looking. I had my eyes shut tight. It was so bright, and I couldn't even see. It was so bright. And then I realized that it was the Lord in front of me, and he was about 50 yards ahead of me, but he didn't touch the ground because I could see he wasn't on the ground, and he was just sitting there, and it was so radiant and so bright. It was brighter than the sun. It was the brightest thing I'd ever seen, and the feeling was so strong that it was just the most peaceful thing I've ever felt in my life, and it was so warm, and it was so bright, and it was just something you just can't describe. It was just unreal. So I don't know what it was. Because of me, I was chosen to have him come down that close to me. Is unreal. I couldn't believe it, and so I couldn't move. I was on my knees and I couldn't move, and I don't know how long I've been sitting there because time stopped. There was no time. I don't know how long I was there, but I know that it was him because he could talk to you without talking to you. You could just feel what he was saying in your mind, and it was just unbelievable how much of an experience, just an experience that most people that most people I tell this story to won't even believe it, because it's just something you can't believe, but it happened. And then I don't know how long I was there and what happened, but after a minute, the brightness just kind of slowly ascended back up into the air, and after it got so high that it just disappeared. And I'm just sitting there wondering what happened to me. I don't know. I really don't know. But I looked over, and there was a bush right there by the side of me, and there was 2 birds sitting in this bush. And I'm thinking, why are these birds sitting by me? I mean, your birds don't just come and sit by you. And I'm just thinking, why? And so I reached over and I put my finger up and I put it under the chest of the bird, and it hopped on my finger, and I thought, well, this isn't real. And so I brought him over in front of me and looked at him, and I talked to him, and I put my other hand up and I patted him on the head, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And so I slowly put him back over and set him on that little limb. He jumped off my finger back on the limb, and I thought, well, so I put my finger under the other one, and I brought him over and looked at him, and he wasn't scared of me. He just like a normal bird. So I just put him back, set him there, and I got thinking, wow, this is interesting. I thought, these animals have been in the spirit of God, and they're not scared anymore. They're just not scared. And I thought, wow, that was real interesting. Sorry I get a little emotional about this, but it was an experience. So I got back on my horse and I started to head back towards the other guys, because I knew that they'd be wondering where I was. I didn't know how long I was gone, and so I'm riding. I knew the trail went up and it turned and headed up this little canyon, so I thought I'd cut across and just go across and meet the trail up, so I'd cut a little time off. And I started walking with the horse, and we started going across this little meadow, and I looked up and there was a big bull elk sitting there in the meadow, laying down, just looking at me, and I thought, wow, this is strange. And so by the time I realized what I was doing, my horse was headed right towards this bull elk, and I thought, this isn't going to go well. I think horses and bull elk, I don't think, get along too good together. And so I thought, well, I can't turn now. The horse is going that way, and so we'll just see what happens. And so I started riding along there, and I rode up, and I rode right past that bull elk sitting there in the meadow. And he was a big one. He had like 6 points, and the horns went way back. And after a second, I was thinking, this is kind of scary. I don't know what to do. And so I just let the horse go, and it just walked right on past that bull elk, and just like it didn't even care if it was there or not. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So anyway, I just rode on past the bull elk and met up with the guys a little bit later, and they asked me where I went, and I says, well, I stopped back down at the meadow to walk around a little bit because my legs were kind of numb, and I never did tell them what had happened to me back there. But anyway, there was a lot of things happened up at this place we went, and that night we made camp, and I don't know how many of you have been up in the high Uintas at night, but it gets cold. It probably gets down around 40 degrees at night up there, and so we all was in our sleeping bags, and it was probably 1 o'clock in the morning, and then all of a sudden it started to get real warm, and I thought, wow, this is interesting, because the Uintas, I've been up here a lot of years, and I've never kicked out of my sleeping bag in the middle of the night because it was so warm. And so I kicked out of my sleeping bag, and I'm laying there on top of it, and it's getting pretty warm. It's probably 70 degrees, and that's warm up there at night. And all of a sudden, I started seeing these big blue lights flash like lightning, and I thought, well, what's going on? Because you look up in the air, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. There was nothing. Yet I see lightning coming up out of the ground, and it'd flash up about 30 feet in the air, and it was just this crackling noise, and it was blue flame, and it was just coming up out of the ground. And I thought, this is interesting. I think what's happening here is there's a static charge going by, and there's so much mineral in the ground up here that I think that the ground is eliminating an electrical charge coming up out of the ground, and so I thought, well, I can't see because it's dark where it's coming out of, so I started drawing arrows with my foot on the ground pointing to where this lightning was coming up, so in the morning I would know where all these mineral deposits were, because I'm sure that's what it was. And I started getting up and walking. I thought, well, this isn't good. I said, I can be fried like a piece of bacon here. And I thought, I felt all the hair and on my head and everything was sticking straight in the air, like you'd take a balloon and rub it on your head and you can feel the electricity from the balloon. But this is what it felt like. And I'm just standing there by my tent, and all of a sudden my hair and everything's going up in the air from all this static electricity, and I said, this isn't going to go well. I've got to do something. I thought, what am I going to do? And so I thought, well, I'll just go lay down on my sleeping bag. So I just went and lay down my sleeping bag, and then after a couple hours the blue lights and flashes stopped, and so that was an interesting night there at that special place we went. And I call it God's Valley because on the side of the hill there's a great big Indian face up there on the side, and I don't know if I think I've showed pictures of it before, but maybe I will again. But it's it's probably 100 feet but it looks like it has hair and eyes and a mouth. But that's the sacred Indian burial ground where all the chiefs are buried, and I really don't like to go up in that area because it's sacred ground, and but that's where all this mineral is. And my grandfather told me when I was about 8 years old that the rose mines are by the sacred Indian burial grounds and you shouldn't be getting around them. And I thought, well, that's probably a good reason. So anyway, there's a lot of other things that happened up in that area before, but well, maybe some other time we'll go over some of the other stories that I had happen up in that area. But it's quite the area. But there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 mines up in that area that I know of that are real rich. I'm thinking these are the richest mines there are up there. And with that blue lightning coming up out of the ground and being highly mineralized up there, I don't doubt it a bit. But this is the area where Hathenbrook and Rhodes were going to have their 4 square mile lease, and they never really let on to anybody where this area was at, because there were people trying to take it away from them, and so they'd make claims a lot of different areas and say this is it, and nobody ever really knew what was the right place. But I have a map that shows this whole area, and that's how I was able to go there.
So, man, I wasn't expecting a story like that out of you, you know, and you got emotional about it, and I you know, had a spiritual experience myself where I don't talk about it because people just don't understand that, and thank you for sharing for that, because I can tell, you know, that's really touched you and special. So, but, you know, was anything said during that time? Did you you know, any special things happen during that light? Was, you know?
No, not really. I just know that I was kind of specially picked out to know these things, and that's all I can really know.
Man, I appreciate you sharing, you know, that experience, because until you've gone through something like that, you know, mine wasn't like that, but it had to deal, you know, with you know, that what do I want to say? I didn't used to. I hoped there was a God, but I didn't know that there was, and until I went through these miracles and experiencing the hundreds of them all in a short amount of time, you know, there is something out. Until you go through an experience like you had, you know, you just don't know. And thank you for sharing that.
Well, there's no way in the world that I can deny that there's not a God, because there is. And since that time, I've been able to go over places in my mind and see things and fly above things and look down and see areas and shown places that I'd never get to see without going there, but I was taken there. And it happened to me at Moon Lake. I was shown that sacred mine there, and but that one there, I don't think we're going to be able to talk about that one. But there's several places that I've been able to taken to and shown, and a lot of people don't believe that, and I really don't care, because
yep, it happened to you, and you didn't. Yeah. So do you know why you was shown these things, or is there a purpose? Can you talk about? Can you say anything like that?
I don't know, because things are still up in the air. We don't even know where our country's going right now, and I don't know. Maybe I'll get to know later on and be revealed, but right now I don't know.
Again, Randy, that's that was part of a story I hadn't heard you tell before, and it was emotion to you, I can tell, and it was special to you, and wow, thanks for sharing it. And with that, that's a wrap.